Hi, and welcome to my lighthouse on the Block Party server. This particular lighthouse is modeled after the Aveiro light on the northern coast of Portugal. And it's actually an upgrade to a light I did many years ago. That light had a grid of redstone lamps that was 3 by 3. As you can see, each face of this lighthouse has a grid that is 5 by 4. Now this allows you to have a much more impressive lighthouse than a simple 3 by 3 grid. But it also creates a lot more complexity. And let me show you why. If you look inside here, you can see that there is a lot going on. This thing is really observer heavy, and it was the best way after many attempts I found to actually do it. And the reason is because you're actually running two halves, the top half and the bottom half of this light, and they need to be synchronized. And that was the biggest challenge that I had. I also added in, behind this black wall here, is a daylight sensor that allows this light to turn off during the day and turn back on at night. I did, however, include a lever over here that allows you to turn the light on during the daytime and leave it on all the time if that's what you would want to do. However, it doesn't work the other way. You can't turn off the light at night because that would be unsafe. But if you are up for building something this complex, let me show you how to do that. I am going to just build it from the bottom of the light up. I figure anybody can figure out how to make the tower below it. Hopefully you've played Minecraft long enough to do that. So let me show you how this was done. Now here's that exact same beacon, but I built it from the top of the lighthouse tower up. And let me show you a little more in depth about how this thing works. If we go back inside here, you can see that you've got the two halves of the redstone lamps, the top two and the bottom two. And those are controlled by these pistons. The pistons go in, grab hold of one of the observers, and pull it back out. And that breaks the chain. Now these observers are going around in a circle up here, creating that rotating pattern. Below that is another observer that's observing it. Each time that that observer gets a signal, it triggers the one beneath it, which then lights the lamp immediately beneath it. Underneath that is another lamp that will be lit by the one above it. So you're able to break this into two halves, and essentially you are looking at two halves of the exact same design, just the top half flipped in on the bottom half. Now, like I mentioned, the hard part is synchronizing that top piston with this bottom piston. And that's where all these observers come into play. They are basically timing this so that the two pistons operate exactly at the same time. So if I flip this lever, you're going to notice absolutely nothing happens. And the reason is because there's enough daylight outside to activate the daylight sensor that's inside there. But if I switch it over to daytime, you will see that that immediately turned off. And now I can utilize this switch to turn things on and off. Now let's watch what happens up here. You can see our two pistons. So we're going to flick this and see how they fired at the same time. We turn it off. They fire at the exact same time. That keeps that top half and bottom half synchronized. So what I did to make this a little bit easier to understand is that I built this same light over and over again. Block by, okay, I didn't do it block by block. Those are actually structure blocks. But what I did is built it one layer at a time to help you better build this on your own. And hopefully in the process, you'll pick up on just how this was built and why it works the way it does. But due to the complexity, to build this like a lot of other redstone builds would be really difficult and it probably wouldn't make sense. But I'll do my best to explain it as we go. This first layer is simply the floor of the top section of the lighthouse. I just used oak planks for the flooring, and then you can see the outside layer of the tower itself. Now I did include a staircase opening here because I actually included a staircase all the way up that tower. It's not necessary, but you can do it if you'd like, and that hole won't get in the way of any of the things in this top level. Then I started adding some of the redstone and other components on layer 2. These trapdoors right here, they're not necessary. I put them in there to make it prettier for me and my sensibilities. Also added some ladders to get up to that balcony right there if you wanted to from within this room. Then I've got a little redstone dust here. That redstone dust is actually going to pick up the signal from the daylight sensor and transmit it into the beacon device itself. This repeater here is set at 0 clicks, so you can leave it like that. This one here, however, you want to make sure that that is at its longest setting, which is 3 clicks. And then we've got a lever here, allows you to turn this thing on during the day, but it won't allow you to turn it off at night because, again, that would be dangerous. But you can turn it on during the day for testing, or if you just want to have it on all the time, using this lever, and it'll override the daylight sensor. Moving on to the next layer, I've added more redstone components. We've got the blocks, obviously, that a lot of the redstone sits on. I've just used white concrete for all of this. And we've got another little spot of redstone dust here, another one here, and then again, another repeater. Now this repeater is, again, set to 3 ticks. Make sure you set yours to 3 ticks as well, because timing is really important in this system. Then you can see the daylight sensor here. Now I put it behind a window so that it would obviously be exposed to daylight, but wouldn't be lit by any of the lighting that I've got inside here. We want to make sure it works properly, and I wanted to bring it down a little ways from that beacon itself because otherwise the light from the beacon triggers the daylight sensor. So hopefully that makes sense, and I did add another window on this side to make it pretty. Moving on, the next layer, I added some more of the redstone components, made my window a little bit taller here, and made my little room for the daylight sensor a little larger as well. Now what I did here is just added some more of the blocks, as well as some more of the redstone components. This particular repeater is set at 0 ticks. And that is all for that one. Coming over to the next one, I capped off the area for my daylight sensor. You can see it hidden inside there. Added some more ladders just to keep us moving up. And finished off the area above the windows. The next layer of redstone here is just a little more redstone dust, as well as another repeater on a couple of the white concrete blocks with more redstone dust coming up. Now this particular repeater is vital that you put it on the correct setting. So for this one, you can see it was on 2 or 1. So if this is 0, you want it at 1 tick. And that's the one we did before that you can see is at 0. Moving on, we've added another layer of stone here, and you can see these white concrete blocks in the corner. We're going to need those for redstone, but they're also a great place to hang lanterns down so that you can actually see what's going on inside here. In addition to that, to reduce lag, you want to keep redstone components lit because they basically, each time they turn on and off and change the light level on all the other blocks, they actually create a little bit of lag, and it can really add up on larger redstone projects. So if we go up here, we can see the first of our observers. Now these observers are pointing up. You can see the arrow pointing up. So if we place one of these, what you're going to want to do is come from the top. That way you'll see that little spot right there, and your eyes are on the bottom. I think those are eyes. Looking at these components underneath. What I've done here is created two different paths to these two spots. One takes longer than the other, and that's why that one redstone repeater, it's vital that that be on the correct number of ticks, and that's this one here. You can adjust some of this timing by tweaking these repeaters that go to each side. Now, one of these goes to the top layers, the other one goes to the bottom layers. So those are extremely vital that you get them in the right position. You can also see I added some fences around here just to make things prettier. You can see them in use over there underneath the balcony. Moving on, we've got our balcony now. I did throw some trapdoors in here so we can get up and down. And I want to show you something interesting here. If you look, you can see this blinking on and off right now. And what's happening is this redstone signal is seen by this observer turning on and off, which triggers this observer, which is looking at that one, which triggers this one, which is looking at that one, which lights up that redstone. This observer sees that one, and so on. And what you end up with is this circle of redstone signal just chasing around and around and around. That is essentially what's timing our light. Now, if we go here, you can see another one of the observers pointing upward. This is our first piston. It's a sticky piston, and it will take care of turning on and off the lower layers of the light. And then I added another piece of concrete here just to level things out. And you will notice that there is the redstone dust in each of those corners. Now, moving up, you can see, let me get rid of this observer quick. You can see the balcony railing and some of the pretty components that inevitably lead up to the roof. But more importantly, here is the actual observers that run the loop and light up those lights. So if I were to drop down here and turn this on, you can see those observers going around and around as that redstone signal goes around and around. And there really isn't much else up on this layer, just those observers. Make sure the arrows are all pointing up, as well as this one pointing up. On to the next one, you can see the actual lights here. Now I've got it turned off, but these lights would then follow the observer. So those observers chase around. If I can get over here, a little tight in here. But if I go up here and take a look, you can see the first semblance of our lighthouse beacon chasing around. And then I've added another observer here because we need to get that signal up to the upper layers of this beacon. Next up, I've added some more of the railing here. A little more of the wall here. And then we've got the second layer of redstone lamps, which are actually lit by the lamps below. Once that block is powered, it will also power the block next to it. And so that's what you end up with here, and yet another observer moving that signal farther up to that top layer. Moving here, we've got now the bottom layers, and now the first part of the top layer, as well as yet another observer to move that signal upward. But really, besides the railing and these posts here, there really isn't a lot going on in this particular layer. If I move on, actually on this side, I've gone up yet another layer with the railing posts and these corner posts, and yet another observer, and all pointed the same way, and then our top layer of the light. So if I go down and turn this on now, you can see that only the bottom is operating. And that's because this signal hasn't finished doing its work yet. It still needs to go up higher. And that's in this one. So we've got another layer here, And I started using some staircases to add the roof. And this is always fun because you get to lay these and get them to try to figure out the corners. You can do it however you want. These actual roof blocks here are not vitally important. And then I put some obsidian here just because I think that's obsidian. Or blackstone, one of the two. And I did that just to give a specific look outside here that I wanted. But then inside, this is where things get real important again. Now, these particular observers are pointing the opposite way. Notice how the arrows are pointing down, which means you're going to have a bit of a challenge because you're going to have to do it from this direction so that you get the eyes pointing up. Get rid of that. So you can see all of the eyes are pointing up with the exception of this one, which has got the little redstone nipple, the little redstone dot facing upward. So if we move on, now we have got our little chasing row of observers here, and this will create that sequence for the lower level. So these are transmitting that signal. These are actually creating that circular signal. We've got our piston here, another sticky piston, and this piston pushes and pulls this observer in and out of the line, thereby triggering that circular motion or disconnecting it. And that works really simple. It's the same way the lower one works. And then I've got another block here that is being powered by the observer in order to power that sticky piston. So you can take a look at that. It's fairly straightforward. However, there is also some redstone dust on each of the corners. This redstone dust will transmit the signal around the corners and also allow that redstone signal to be picked up by the observer underneath it to light the lamp below it. And that is all for the redstone components. Now it's just the pretty stuff. So I'm adding more roof here. And I've got the layer that we just looked at, you can see is down one level. Added another level here. This gets pretty boring. Added another level here. Oh, this little shape here, don't worry about it. I just used it to support that top layer here. Added yet another layer. Added some stairs on top of here. Added a block right here, added another block right here, and then of course put the, this is a, that thing, an end rod. This is an end rod on top here. You can do whatever you want. You could put a lightning rod up there if you really wanted to. But that is it. That is this entire build. Now, I know it was probably a little challenging. You probably had to pause the video to actually build this, but I couldn't think of an easier way to do it that would allow you to build this and have it work effectively. Now, remember, the big thing is the timing. If you need to tweak some of those repeaters, then chances are you set them wrong to begin with. But you can tweak them to speed up or slow down the signals going to the top and bottom. And that's it, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed this video on building a bigger lighthouse beacon. If you did, please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, or best of all, share. And if you didn't like this video, please keep it to yourself. Thanks for watching.